I'm Inés from Peru. We say hola in Spanish to say hello. And I've been an activist for over 10 years now. And I started engaging as a young person in environmental activism, in social activism, without really knowing what that meant and how I should be engaged. I was taking action in shanty towns and on beaches since I was 15 years old. I also had the example of two great grandmothers. My grandmother in Peru had 10 kids and spent her life taking care of them. And my grandmother in Wales got married at a very young age and then took on leadership roles in a country that was very foreign to her in Peru. And these women taught me a lot about what meaningful youth engagement means without probably even knowing what the term was. But their support to their children and communities around them was precisely meaningful engagement, whether to youth or to underprivileged communities. They're both also strong Christian women, and I aspire to be that. And there's a verse in my belief in the Bible that says, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example in speech, in conduct, in love, and faith, and in purity. And for me, in that verse, in my beliefs, I learned that as a young person, I shouldn't be looked down on, but I could work together with older people, more experienced people, and make myself heard and also take action. And I experienced that throughout my life in my volunteering. First of all, starting off with an organization called Loop, working on plastic pollution. And it was really a mindset of the founders to help young people be able to be the leaders that they aspired to be, or even not necessarily aspired to be, just wanted to take action and help them take that leadership. And the way that we worked together was really, any idea was welcome. And we were allowed to take on leadership roles, to have creative ideas, to have the space to grow and the right to be heard. And it was also a commitment and an engagement on their side, that those who were investing in time were invested in too. So this experience taught me that meaningful youth engagement really means trusting others. They trusted a 15 or 16-year-old girl to lead a national beach cleanup and allow to rally thousands of volunteers across the country. They trusted me to be able to come early on Saturdays and lead workshops in schools and so on. But it also meant for them setting up the right protocols. The founders did talk with my parents to make sure that this was consented and that this wasn't child labor, but I really wanted to make a difference. And that was my first experience in meaningful youth engagement without even knowing what the word meant. Around the same time, I also joined an organization called Techo, which works in shanty towns of Peru and actually in the whole of Latin America. And it's a youth-led organization. This organization, when I joined it, had another name, but it's evolved over time. And basically, with young people, goes to shanty towns and finds a way to support the communities to sustainably get out of the situation of extreme poverty that they're in. It can start with building houses, which is what I started with, going to a shanty town and building a house for a family after having fundraised for it in school. But it's not just a house. Then once you've created that connection with the community, it allows to find other ways for them to get more sustained income or see why it is that their son or daughter is really ill, maybe because of the living conditions that they're in, and that's draining the family's resources and so on. And so when I moved away from Peru in 2015, I founded a sister organization called Ensemble pour Techo in France. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was a young person that just wanted to generate change. And we started raising funds for this organization in Latin America. The first year we raised less than 1,000. It was just over 600 euros in the first year. And we were able to support some work being done in Nicaragua. The second year we raised even less, actually, just over 500 euros for a project in Peru. The year after that, we were very excited because in partnering with other organizations, we raised 10 times more than the previous year, which still wasn't a lot in the humanitarian space, 5,000 euros to build a school in Haiti. And 2018, 2019, 2020, it was about the same amount. So you can see it took a while. And I was, as a young leader, just trying to support communities in Latin America with a whole bunch of volunteers. But it wasn't until 6-7 years after our first endeavor that we really saw that we started to generate much more change to the funds that we were raising. So the year after that, in 2021, we raised 56,000 euros. And just last year, we raised over 100,000 euros. So to me, that was huge. And why did we manage that? We were persistent. So it kind of taught me that asking for meaningful youth engagement as a young leader also means that I need to stick to it. And I don't need to be flaky, and I need to earn that trust from institutions and from organizations that will choose to support us if we're doing things right. It also taught me that things take time, and the organizations that we work with, and now we receive funding from government entities, from foundations, means relationship building, and the engaging means that we should also look to engage with those institutions and not always be at odds with them. But it also taught me when to step back. So this year, after 8 years in the leadership of this organization, I stepped back because although I'm still a young person, I believe there are so many other young people that I can support to be the leaders that I was once supported to be, and that I don't always have to be in the forefront leading something to meaningfully engage other young people around me or to ask others to meaningfully engage them. This experience allowed me to then gain better understanding not only at local action, but also globally. And just before the pandemic, I joined Restless Development as part of the Youth Power panel. And this organization has really helped me see what meaningful youth engagement really looks like. We were a panel of 12 young people from all over the world doing global advocacy to achieve the global goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. And right off the bat with my role was the Senior Youth Power Coordinator. So pretty much coordinating young people's power across the world. And after I had been on the panel, I got this role as a staff member in the organization, and I was able to help organize youth power hacks, as we called them, finding young people's ideas to really develop solutions to the issues in their communities, and working with stakeholders, in this case, private organizations or companies, to be able to support those young leaders. And that meant that we had to train those young people. So meaningful youth engagement meant supporting the young people with the ideas to actually then deliver them with the right training from other partners across the world. It also meant accountability. I was now in a position of power, having a job that allowed me to do the advocacy I'd done as a volunteer for so long. Now I had that accountability towards other young people. And it's the accountability we always ask of leaders as they engage with young people. It's not only asking young people for ideas, but then actually working together and then showing the results of that conversation, not just tokenistically involving young people. It also showed me the need to value others, which is including fair compensation. Many times as young people, we work tirelessly and have the time to give to these things that we're passionate about, but sometimes we can wear out, or sometimes we need to choose between something that can help feed our families and an opportunity that could help us grow. And so Restless Development really worked to make sure that all the members of the Youth Power panel, young people who were working on these ideas, had compensation to be able to dedicate the time to it that they really wanted to. But it's not always like that. Meaningful youth engagement is far from being something that all the world has really taken on board. And one of my experiences with that was COP, which are the conferences of parties for the environment that happen every year. And I was privileged enough to go to COP25 in Madrid. I was living in France at the time, and COP was supposed to happen in Chile and was kind of last minute moved to Spain. And I thought, I'm close by. My government may now see themselves in difficulty to send so many people to a country more far away than they were planning to. I have time, I can go. So I reached out to my government and asked them, do you want me to go? And they said, yes, sure, you can come. But they were giving me the access to the conference. They weren't giving me any resources to get there. Thankfully, I had friends living close to Madrid, so I stayed with them. And I was really excited because I was having access to this global space that I hadn't been to before. But I didn't realize that I was kind of just being thrown into something without knowing what it was. I was asked to follow the topic of deforestation, which is a topic I hadn't worked on before. And to just be in a conference for 2 weeks. Mind you, at that point, I didn't have a phone. So I wasn't able to keep in touch with the people who were sending messages about where to be, what to do. We didn't have any training. All I received was a position paper from my government about what exactly I was allowed to say or not to say. And so at that point, I didn't realize that this was not meaningful youth engagement. I was really grateful for that opportunity. But the year after that, I was able to go to the UK for the COP26, and this time with restless development. At COP26, there's even an article 64 of the decision cover that says it urges parties and stakeholders to ensure meaningful youth participation and representation in multilateral, national, and local decision-making processes, including under the Convention and the Paris Agreement. And so it was only the next COP where there was actually an article that supported that meaningful youth participation, and more governments have started to train young people. There are more initiatives to support young people to really understand this space. And I kept going to different COPs. I went to COP27 also last year in Egypt, and trying to represent that missing majority of young people who aren't always in these spaces. So for me, meaningful youth participation is both my experience of participating in spaces, but it's also making sure that I don't forget my privilege and that we're not perpetuating inequalities in making ourselves engaged, but really allowing that meaningful engagement to go beyond the people who are generally in global spaces. So as I've shared a bit of my experience, I just wanted to finish also sharing some tools that have helped me, or that I have helped develop as well with different organizations on what meaningful youth engagement is. While working with Restless Development, we helped develop what we called the Youth Power Principles, which are basically a checklist or a list of 10 things that young people are. And when we say we want meaningful youth engagement, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about supporting young people who are leaders already, young people who are imaginative, and so on. And then paired with that, we have a power shifting checklist, which is a checklist of 6 things that we're asking partners to do to make sure that they are shifting power and meaningfully engaging youth. And this involves prioritizing youth leadership, training, supporting, resourcing young leaders, prioritizing young people's safety and happiness, taking into account our mental health, being open, dynamic, and accountable, and this goes both ways, intentionally shifting power, not just letting it happen, and also being a bit restless, innovating and creating and allowing things to change and evolve. So I believe, and I'm sure we can share this document with you, or you can find it on the website, that meaningful youth participation is important because in my particular case, it led me to find my cause or my causes, things that I was passionate about and that now have led to the jobs that I hold. It also developed skills at an age where I could more easily learn them. And it also kind of benefited the organizations that worked with me because I had more time and it was used wisely in being able to capitalize on my weekends or evenings or times when I didn't have other responsibilities of adult life. Now, in my new job as Lead Next Generation Fellow at the UN Foundation, I'm able to work with loads of organizations, including Youth for Road Safety, that have already developed tools. So if you haven't yet seen the documents that Youth Road Safety has done on this. Do check them out. Even the Secretary General created a meaningful youth engagement policy brief that outlines his principles on what meaningful youth engagement looks like, positioning young people as equal partners in decision making and giving them the resources, institutionalization, and accessibility that they need. So to close off, because I know I am at time and there's so much more to learn, I just wanted to say, when we're talking about meaningful youth engagement, in my personal experience, it means both being accountable myself as a young leader and as I grow up, because we do age out of this youth. It's not like other things that we're always, my nationality will probably always be the same. For instance, it's not something I'll necessarily change, but my age, I know it will change. So making sure we remember that, and as we become older, we meaningfully engage those around us. But even as youth, meaningfully engaging young people who don't necessarily have the access that we had, and the other way around, making sure that no one looks down on us, and really making sure that when we're engaging with them, we are seen as equals. And there are so many tools for that that we can share from the Unlock Coalition partners and many different intergenerational pieces of guidance that I hope you'll enjoy reading. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to hearing how you have engaged meaningfully and been engaged meaningfully, or how not, and how it's also been hard, because I think it's important to talk about those things too. Thanks so much, and take care.